Is he?
Yeah. Awesome. Just because the way she looks. No other reason.
That's amazing.
You should be more scared about the fucking pain in the ass.
Yeah, right. Alex Smith, done in Washington. Just got the notification. Thanks for being the comeback player of the year.
Goodbye.
Get out of town.
Plenty of time.
Beautiful. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Made our official mayoral campaign announcement today.
Nice.
Had the candidate here in the studio at 7:15 a.m. to do an interview. They're not allowing in-studio guests at WSYR yet, so whatever. So basically, I just had him use the microphone here so that he would sound all right. But
Well, that's good.
it went off good, I guess. So.
That's amazing.
So far, so good.
That's exciting.
Yeah, you know.
Got to take down Ben Walsh somehow, right?
All I need, if I get 4,000 votes, he loses.
I'm not allowed to vote for the mayor, but if I could, I would vote for your guy.
I mean, our goal is to get 12,000 wins it, I think, but 4,000 make sure that the Democrat wins it, and Ben can't.
I love that you're going for the
I'm
Democrat.
just making sure that there's priorities there.
You're just going scorched earth, which I kind of respect.
Listen, for the record, he asked me 2.5 years ago to run for mayor this year, so it's not like this is just like out of the blue, whatever. So all the pieces happen to line up in a certain way where I'm like, okay, well, here we are.
Yeah.
Unintended consequences could be glorious, that's all.
I'm getting to the point of like, fuck it all.
Dude, well, welcome to my world.
I know.
It's been that way for 10 years.
Like this system is so far beyond redemption.
You can't fix it.
Genuinely, fuck it all. There's my buddy Omar was a libertarian down in Florida. He sends me a bunch of shit, like we have exchanged. And the number of times, like, he sends me something, and the only thing that I can think to respond, and I went through a text, and it's a lot of that's like all I respond when he sends me stuff is, seriously, fuck these people so much. Like, I can't take these fucking idiots anymore.
Like I said, that literally is why I started the party.
Is it?
Because I'm just like I mean, this all came to my realization, and like I said, reading Ron Paul,
right,
like from the 2007 to 2012, like that
was your awakening.
Was like, yeah, and it was just, I tried to, at the early on, I was like, all right, yay, we're this candidate guy, whatever. And then by 2012, I was like, this fucking thing sucks. Like, I'm still on the candidate guy, but I was like, this is fuck this system. So here I am 10 years later, trying to fuck shit up as much as I can. And it sucks when I have to read articles like where they're asking Ryan, he's like, well, you know, we'd rather have a Republican split the vote between the Democrat and the mayor or whatever. I'm like, so I just know that there's, and everybody has told me, like, oh, fucking Ryan's gonna be pissed because he wants Ben. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck about Ryan or Ben. Like, that's not my concerns at all.
Believe it or not, I'm not a Republican. So it's not my overarching concern.
Like, I'm a chair of a completely different party. Like, I'm just fucking shit up on you guys, and I understand that.
I'm just here to fucking bring the flamethrower and let's do this.
I like this. I've been saying since 2016, I'm like, I'm just here to muddy the waters.
I like it.
I'm just here to fucking muddy the waters.
I love it.
I just don't care. So, all right, I got the Tiger Woods accident.
Yeah, that sucked.
I got a picture of the car that I got articles now, each one of these. I don't do actually still photos anymore, but I figured out how to get the articles up here. So I have like a Golf Digest article or some shit that shows the car. Yeah. We'll talk about all the players wearing red on Sunday. I don't know if you saw that. All the players wore red shirts and black pants. Nice. A lot, like Rory never wore red before in his whole life. Even Phil wore a red Arizona shirt at the Champions Tour. So so whatever. Bitcoin tumbles, but now it's back to 49,000. I feel like I just saw. So, but it was down to 43. The GHISLAINE Maxwell stuff or Ghislaine Maxwell stuff. So Ira Rosen is a former 60 Minutes reporter. Yeah. He's writing a book, and apparently in this book he talks about how he was interviewing Ghislaine Maxwell and tricked her into admitting that there were tapes on Trump and Clinton. Who knows if they're? I mean, if she just listen, she could be just fucking so conniving that she just planted that shit just to fuck with people. Who knows?
I wouldn't be shocked.
But I just want to cover it. Yeah. Because basically she said this all came to light in 2016. And she was like, well, I'm not going to try to, she's like, I'm not going to, if I give you the stuff on Trump, that means the stuff on Clinton's going to come out. And right now I just feel like Clinton's going to win. So I don't want to rock the boat. So whatever. So who knows how that would have played out if thing. And then we'll go into Cuomo. Whatever I have Cuomo crumbling because I have one article up there that kind of shows about the rise and reckoning of Cuomo. And then Ron Kim calling for impeachment, which obviously seems like fucking years ago now, but it literally happened on Monday after we showed it happened Monday. And then so de Blasio came out and called for the immediate removal of Cuomo's emergency powers. So this should already be done. Right. This should already be done. And then obviously the whole Attorney General investigation, who now she's got independent subpoena powers. Like, I don't know if you saw that Cuomo first tried to appoint an investigator himself. Then he was like, okay, we'll let the Attorney General do it. She can work with this state judge over here that I appointed. Now, he's not using the I appointed part, but I am. And then she was like, no. She's like, I want independent investigation with subpoena power. And he gave her the referral and gave it to her. So now she has full reign to do whatever she wants, I think. We think. Everybody thinks.
I got you.
But that's where we're at for today's news. And then I'm going to recover the giveaway again. We don't have an interview. And I'm going to try to call Ben Davidson this week and try to set him up for one of the next couple weeks.
I love it.
And then I am going to try to call Bill Hammond again. See if I can get him back on. Do we sent him one email and he didn't respond to me. But I saw he was on a reporter who used to work for the Auburn Hub. He doesn't work for them anymore. He started his own podcast, and I saw he was on there. I was like, that motherfucker's stealing my fucking guest.
Do we want to bring on, what was his name? Phil
Magnus?
Phil Magnus. See if he'll come back on?
Probably.
Actual economic devastation that's occurred and what the fuck is coming next?
Did I tell you that I asked him to look into the Jerry Rescue?
No.
You know what the Jerry Rescue is?
No.
Did I mention that to you?
No.
The Jerry Rescue is literally one of the greatest stories ever told, and it happened right here in Syracuse.
Okay.
It happened during the fugitive slave days.
Oh, shit. No, you did send me this. Okay. They literally overwhelmed the jail.
Yeah, the Liberty Party.
Yeah.
Basically, they were having their convention in Syracuse.
Right.
And then they left the convention. They went and they broke this dude out of jail and I
love it.
And snuck him to Canada.
That's awesome. Like, they didn't even sneak him out. They just fucking went in. We're like, fuck you.
Yeah, no. They weren't. This was not a covert thing. This was like we're just overwhelming them. Yeah,
and they snuck him out so that nobody could tell which
direction
we
have a statue
he went
for
in.
this in Syracuse,
That's
but
awesome.
nobody ever does anything about it. So, but I feel like it should be a movie. Like I feel like that should be like the backdrop of like I don't know what the movie can't just be a documentary. But it should be like there should be some compelling storylines in there someplace.
I tend to agree with that.
All right, 11:58. We've been live.
Do we have any update on what the hell's happening to Ryan McMahon?
I have not got any. I mean, he still tweets and stuff every day, so it's not like he's like laid up or anything. But last time I knew, he had left eye damage or nerve damage in his left eye.
And they're saying that was caused by stress.
He went under a battery of tests. They thought he was having a stroke when he first went in. Went through a bunch of tests, had nothing. They can't find anything wrong with him. They were attributing it to stress just because. But I would love to know the fucking second shot date.
By the way, I talked to a buddy of mine that works for 911 in Monroe County. If you call 911 with COVID, at first they were saying it's just fine, just call COVID. But now they describe it as with an illness. And then when people were having really bad reactions to the vaccine, at first they would say that. They would tell the first responders, like, all right, it's a vaccine reaction. And now they're having them put it down and input it into the data as the same illness. So whether you have a hospitalization or an ambulance ride because of COVID or the vaccine, it gets labeled the same thing.
Great.
Like, I love having accurate data. It's great.
Yeah.
I hate it. Like, how did we get here?
It was all laid in place long before we were paying attention. I can promise you that.
That's probably a good point.
So,
and that story of Cuomo with the sausage, I don't care. Like, I don't even think it was that bad.
No, it just feeds into the whole nonsense. Yeah, it just feeds into it.
Like, this is what people are going to get upset about? This is, like, he killed 1,000 people, but we're upset about a sausage.
That's the left for you.
Oh, my God, it's amazing.
The left doesn't care about life or death, literally. Right? They only care about how they feels. 12 o'clock.
Welcome to Sports, Clicks, and Politics with your hosts, Ben Hussong and me, Shawn Hannon.
welcome to episode 39 of Sports, Clicks, and Politics. I thank you all for joining us. Mr. Hussong, we thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
How was your weekend?
It was wonderful.
Anything? I got a little break in the freezing cold, blistering snow, a little like 40s.
Yeah, I loved every second of it. I went, had a little get-together, borderline super spreader event, but not quite. We tried to stay outside around a fire. But no, it was like every winter I feel like we do this where we just stop seeing people because it's cold and nobody wants to go outside, which I get. But then it was some friends of ours like, listen, let's get together. We've got this place. We got a fire going and everything else. And it was, you forget how much you miss that until you go do it again. And you're like, it's just good for the soul.
Yeah. No, like I said, it was cold to the bones here for a few days. And it's good just to be able to, like I said, I got outside without a winter jacket on. It was good.
Big win.
Yeah, so I don't know. Last week's show was, I thought, pretty good. We touched on this Cuomo stuff. We're going to kind of fill in a little bit more on that. I had some requests from some of the audience to make sure that for the audio version of the podcast that we give a rundown of our topics at the beginning of the show. That seems a smart thing to do.
That does seem smart.
Because the video people, they can all see it. But
sure. But the audio people cannot.
We've been discriminating against the audio-only people.
It's discriminated?
Whatever.
All right, I'm in.
But anyway, so I'm willing to participate in this. So
hit me.
We're going to talk a little bit Tiger Woods today. We're going to bring some sports back to the show. Unfortunate sports, but Tiger Woods, if you guys know, was in an auto accident. We're going to touch on that. We're going to touch on our favorite cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, who seems to be all over the place. Every week we talk. That's great. We're going to touch a little bit on GHISLAINE Maxwell. Apparently, she may have slipped to a reporter hinting that there may be the existence of videotapes of former presidents Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. So I feel like that's interesting to me. And then we're going to touch on our favorite governor. I guess our favorite governor. I mean, we only have one. He's our favorite and our worst governor, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, currently.
So Governor Cuomo continues to crumble. We're going to touch on all things impeachment, investigation, the stripping of his emergency powers, pretty much all things Cuomo here in New York. So all you audio folks at home, congratulations. You now have a rundown of our show topics, and we'll try to fill you in with some information as we move along here. Anything that you wanted to touch on about last show? I know some of this stuff was the same. Anything more on the COVID herd immunity? Still think we're going to get that in April and all that good stuff?
I think we're definitely trending in that direction, and I think that the looking at all of the data, it's becoming clearer and clearer, which is it's seasonal. It's a respiratory virus, and like most respiratory viruses, it appears to be seasonal in nature because of a plethora of conditions, but vitamin D decrease and people gathering and not getting outside as much and smaller intimate gatherings and whatever else. So for all the people out there that are like, well, we're only going to get past this when everybody gets vaccinated, if that's your threshold, it's never going to happen. Like,
at the way the cases are dropping, we're going to be at zero COVID before they even get the vaccination rolled out.
Yeah, well, thank God we just paid for enough vaccines to get all 330 million Americans vaccinated, even though the most generous poll says about 120 million are willing to get vaccinated.
Yeah, better be safe than sorry, I guess, Mr. Hussong.
Is that safe?
I don't know.
Remember when we used to think you could only spend so much money and you couldn't just print it into existence for whatever you felt like spending?
Yeah, we were wrong, apparently.
Thank God, because otherwise we might have some economic trouble up ahead. But seriously, I keep hearing this of like, I don't know if we're ever going to get there because people are idiots and they won't just get the vaccine. Like, yeah, I'm the idiot. Yeah. Sure.
Like I said, I expect cases to continue to tumble, and like I said, hopefully with that, and just here. Selfishly here in New York with the pressure that's on the governor, hopefully that kind of feeds into his unleashing of some of his powers here. And the sooner they can remove those emergency powers, I think the sooner they're better. But let's touch on sports here first. We had a little bit of unfortunate news in the sports world. Some of our favorites and most hated golfer, Tiger Woods, was involved in a single car accident, a pretty serious one. It involved him hitting a center medium, supposedly traveling at a high rate of speed. We'll find out more as I haven't seen any details in that, but that was kind of the initial reports. Hit a median, crossed over into oncoming traffic, kind of tumbled a couple times, rolled over the car a couple times, hit a couple trees. The car did not look like anybody who was in there probably would have survived, but Tiger Woods did survive and basically came out with serious leg injuries to both legs, so we'll see if that impacts his career. But I don't know. Any thoughts on El Tigre?
thrilled that he survived. I mean, it's an awful circumstance to go through. From what I understand, he shattered both femurs or like maybe one femur and one fibula or something like that. But both legs have not just broken, but shattered bones. It's absolutely going to affect him. I'm never going to write Tiger off to be like he's never coming back to play competitive golf, but it's not going to be soon. Like, this is going to take time to recover from this. That's just... Even for an average person to go back to your average everyday life, this would take months to recover.
Yeah, and now he's 45 with back injury too, right? So he's got a bunch of underlying conditions that might not help with his recovery. It does maybe, I was thinking about this because I don't know if we saw all the players in basically in tribute to Tiger Woods all wore his Sunday best red shirts and black pants and tried to pay tribute to Tiger on Sunday. A lot of the players wore that. Even Phil, who was on the Champions Tour, I saw some maintenance guy at the Puerto Rico Open. So there's kind of embraced this idea of wearing red on Sunday for Tiger this week. But maybe this propels Tiger, or he concedes that he's going to play in the Champions Tour a little bit more sooner than later. I feel like that might be something that he could still kind of maintain his profile and still play golf and not have to compete with the, Colin Morikawa's and Dustin Johnson's and John Rahms of the world?
I don't know.
What do you think?
I doubt it.
Do you think he was going to do it before this? Do you think he was ever going to play in the Champions Tour?
Ever? Yes. Not for 10 years. That's my guess. And I don't think that changes because I think that's like an acknowledgement that it's over.
Yeah.
But the guy just won the Masters last year. Like, it's not like we're that far removed from him winning a major championship. He's still got plenty of skill, plenty of game. I don't know what the effect of this is going to be because now you're talking about a bad back and two bad legs. Those things are kind of important to a golf swing. I'm not a good golfer, but I can assure you that you need all of those things involved if you're going to swing a golf club well.
Yeah, so like that, there's been no mentioning of the back, but, I mean, I can't imagine that you roll over in your SUV a couple times and hit a couple trees, and that doesn't really tweak your back at all. So hopefully not, and hopefully, like I said, hopefully he's a quick recovery and he's back to winning majors. That'd be fun.
It would be. Maybe this is going to solve all his back problems. Like, he twisted just the right way, and now his back's fine, but his legs are broken.
I mean, like The Disorderlies, but you don't know that movie, do you?
I don't.
You're too young. Sorry. Let's move on to our favorite cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. So roller coaster, as always, for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies this week. I think last week we were talking about how it went from 53 to 46, back to 50, and then it went back all the way down to 43, and here we are floating here. What don't we, like 48, 49,000?
49.1.
Yeah, so flirting again with 50,000.
Yep.
You keep hearing people who... And this is partly my fault, I guess, because some people who got into it recently, who have given me some feedback, are all, have had mixed results. Some of them bought at the right time, some of them bought at the different time, where prices have gone up and down. And it's, some of these people who got in recently are seeing this price action for the first time, and maybe I'm just a grizzled veteran of the price moves from 2016 and 2017 and 18. So why should it go so high and so low?
You're jaded.
For sure. But that being said, it's the moves aren't as volatile as they were then. I mean, there's been, I think, 40+% corrections. And obviously that still could happen here. We haven't reached that. But
sure,
each time it seems to get down and it keeps to just bounce right back up and retouch 50,000. So I'll keep riding it out here, hodl for life here, and add where I can. Buy the dip, they say. Did you see that a couple corporations, we talked about Tesla, but Square, another Jack Dorsey company, purchased a large amount of Bitcoin when it dipped down to about 44,000, I think it was, maybe midweek. MicroStrategy bought some additional Bitcoin for their position. So as these companies start adding Bitcoin to their positions, it's only going to minimize the amount of dropping of the price that could actually happen, because these people aren't like Square is not buying Bitcoin to buy it, sell, and trade. They're buying it to hold as leverage for their Bitcoin business. So I don't know. Like I said, everybody is very excited about the movements of crypto, or at least fascinated by them, because they are so volatile. But they're not as volatile as I remember. So I don't know. It's all ado about nothing, I guess, for me. But what's about your Ethereum doing?
It's doing great. It's actually not. It's down, but it's coming back up today. I think this on the cryptocurrencies. I've seen a lot of very smart investment people, from Charlie Munger to David Burry, the guy from The Big Short. Either way, brilliant investors that are coming out basically saying, like, look, guys, this is about as speculative as you could be. This is a bubble that's going to burst. It's driven by hype. And I think that's a very real prospect. There probably is at least some level of this is being driven by hype. And if I was going to be as rational and objective as I could be, looking back historically speaking, is this going to become the acceptable currency around the world? Is the government just going to lay back and let that happen and replace currencies? Not without a fight. And if you were going to put a bet on that, you obviously would probably put it on the governments. But I think we're in a very different situation right now. And I think that from a global standpoint, I do anticipate more governments trying to put up a fight. And by that, I simply mean creating their own digital currencies and trying to get rid of Bitcoin. You can hear them already starting to bemoan and belittle it. But I return to, what is money? It is a generally accepted medium of exchange. So if you and I both agree that Bitcoin can be exchanged and we're willing to do it, then it's a medium of exchange. And it doesn't matter.
Only takes two to transact.
Right. That's it. And so I think there's enough ground support, grassroots support of specifically Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as well, that I can't rule it out, because I do think that there is this growing body of discontent and this growing number of people that are just done with the system. Like, look, the Bernie Sanders guys, the Trump supporters and everything else, like, these are people that are not so much, it's not the candidate. It's not like they love the guy. It's that there are serious problems with our system, and people are starting to catch on, and they're angry. And you're watching it happen in real time, unlike anything we've ever seen before. We watched our, elected and unelected leaders take us down a bad path leading up to 2008. Then it inevitably crashed, as it had to. And then instead of like having that be the moment to be like, hey, maybe we should stop this, they double down. They bail out all these trillionaire and billionaire banks. And basically everybody else was kind of like, good luck.
Yeah, like I said, that was the event that birthed Bitcoin in general. So I kind of like, I'm going to paraphrase Dylan Radigan a little bit, where he basically said Bitcoin is the inverse confidence level in our government, right? So as Bitcoin goes up, the confidence in the government is going down, and vice versa. Agreed. So here we are. The Bitcoin is.
So I do think there is long-term utility in it. I actually do think that is something. Do I anticipate more swings? Yes, because I think that the government has no desire to allow a cryptocurrency that is not regulated or created by it to become a widely accepted medium of exchange. So I do think you'll see more articles and more proclamations by politicians about the dangers of it and how it's used in child sex trafficking and drugs. And it's funny how all of a sudden the government's going to care about child sex trafficking and drugs when it affects their currency, but not when it was, picking drug cartels to be the ones, or giving them guns, or canceling an executive order that allowed us to deport sexual predators.
Selective morality.
Illegally. Yeah, like, it's crazy. Of all of a sudden, when it has to do with currency, $5 says they're going to care, and they're going to be like, if you use Bitcoin, you're basically supporting the terrorists. How long until we hear that?
Listen, I've been hearing it since I started buying it in 2016. So, all right, let's move on to other nefarious people in the world, whatever that means. GHISLAINE MAXWELL.
I would go with nefarious for her.
She is still locked up in some New York jail someplace.
Did she make it to Gen Pop?
Not yet.
Okay.
Much to her chagrin. So apparently, former 60 Minutes reporter Ira Rosen is coming out with a book. I don't think it's out yet, but I think it's coming out soon. And in that book, he details a conversation he had with GHISLAINE MAXWELL. And basically, he says that he tricked her into admitting that there are videotapes of former presidents Bill Clinton and Donald Trump through Epstein. She doesn't say that there's anything explicit on those videotapes, just that there are videotapes. Again, this was kind of more of back in 2016 when this came to light, and the reporter who was trying to get the tapes from GHISLAINE MAXWELL, she basically thwarted his attempts, basically saying that if you're going to if you show Trump's tapes, that you're going to have to throw Clinton's tapes, and she didn't want that to take down what she thought was inevitable Clinton win in 2016, and therefore she didn't want to rock the boat. So I'm not dismissing that there's any videotapes by any means, because I think we all know that there's videotapes just from some of the news reporting from the raids on his properties that they seized some tapes. Who knows what's on those tapes? We assume that those tapes have been used in blackmail. So do we think these things ever come to light?
I'm torn, because I want the answer to be yes so badly. I do. I obviously I don't want to watch the tapes.
Right.
I just want these people to get found out for the horrific human beings that they are, and that they would do this, and this is like a normal part of their everyday life is so sad. Of like Jeffrey Epstein getting caught, and every house, every property, every plane, every boat he owned has wall-to-wall security cameras. It's not an accident.
Like he saw everything.
Right. Like whatever you did on that boat is on video. Whatever you did in that house is on video. It just is. So the fact that it isn't coming out, I find to be equally as troubling. And I like going back and how this all ties together of you had a guy that literally was running the largest international pedophilia sex ring that you could possibly conceive of. And we haven't seen, like we've gotten 3 names. This guy was at it for 25 years, and you're telling me there was only 3 people of note on that list? Shut up.
Yeah.
There's no chance that's true. So it's like, who else is in here? And you look at his ties to Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Alan Dershowitz, like all of these
Wexner,
people.
Leon Black. The list is endless.
Oh, my. And it's got to be so many more. Prince Albert. Like, there's got to be so many more.
Prince Andrew. Did you just implicate the wrong prince?
My bad. Prince Andrew.
Prince Albert, we apologize.
Sorry about that, Al. But anyway, so looking at all of this and you're going, all right, wait a minute. This guy then goes into prison. He gets arrested, goes in a jail, and goes on suicide watch. And then 2 security guards fall asleep, and 2 different security cameras simultaneously go out, and he manages to hang himself with a sheet. With a paper sheet from a bed. And we're all just supposed to go, sure, yeah, that checks out.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
The story is the craziest story of all time.
And nobody's talking about it.
I know. Well, other than here, I wish we could get some. I know.
Like, think
about. I mean,
about.
there's very few people who are actually consistently touching base in on this story.
All right, think about like the implications of what's at stake here. This man, and we've covered this kind of at length, of his wealth came out of nowhere. Right, and now you're telling me he's worth $500 million. I'm going to call BS, because there's no way you don't have that size house in Manhattan, your own private island, your own ranch in Texas, 2 private jets. That is not enough money to fund that lifestyle.
And there is still not one transaction with Jeffrey Epstein's name on it in any of these FEC filings.
It's amazing.
They just don't exist. Like Eric Weinstein brings this up sometimes on his show. He's like, where are the trades? He's like, their name should be someplace. It's like there's nothing.
Yeah, he's supposed to be an investment guy.
He's nothing. There's literally no traces of him existing in that world.
He's an investment guy who never placed one trade. That's a brilliant investor right there. So back to your original question. Are we ever going to get it? I think that we might, actually, because there are so many people on the other side of this now that want this to come out, that are pushing for it. And, you know, we lament the fact that we no longer have a credible, free, or fair press. But my God, how handy would that be right now for somebody like Ira Rosen? Is that his name?
Ira Rosen, that's correct.
Ira Rosen, like, listen, I love that you asked, but let's be real. You only did it because you don't like Donald Trump. You have no desire in going and taking out these other people. And that's what I find maddening about the whole situation is like, okay, good. I get you're on a side. Cool. I don't care who you're cheering for. If your chosen elected official or party has people in it that are actively engaged in pedophilia, I wouldn't want to only know the other guys. I think I'd want to know both sides on that one. To be like, no, I think we can get rid of all of them. I don't care if you happen to line up political, ideologically speaking, with me. You're horrific, and I want you in prison forever.
Yeah, and that's, you know, it seems as though, you know, I don't know. I don't want to say I'm giving up, but this should have been a story long before. You know, we shouldn't still be covering this. It should be the news should be out there.
25 years this guy was at it. Got arrested for soliciting multiple underage girls. Went to jail, kind of. was found, took a plea deal, went to jail on weekends and everything else. And you want to know what the effect on the guy's social circle was? Zero.
Yeah.
Zero. Listen, I don't care if you're my best friend in the world. If you end up pleading guilty to actually seducing and getting after 115-year-old girls, we're not friends anymore. No. Because that's like, hey, you didn't just make a mistake. You are a predator. And I have no interest in being around you. But instead it was, oh, you want to come to Harvard and MIT? You want Bill Gates to come out to the house? You want Alan Dershowitz to fly out? You want to have Bill Clinton out on the jet? Cool.
Parties at the press in New York. Like, it's crazy.
And this guy, like, you know who he is now. And like, oh, it was a mistake in judgment. Like,
and actually, we talked about this for months and weeks. It's just a question of how well insulated he is, right? And we don't know because we don't know who he's got stuff on. So
everybody.
I assume he's well insulated. All right, so let's turn our attention. Well, before we do that, because I forgot to tell everybody to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Why don't you all do that? Take this time. We need the likes, we need the subscribers, we need the shares to kind of get the message out and grow the channel. So please do that. And then if you hit that notification bell, you will be notified when we publish new content, and you can view it as fresh as possible. So now let's turn to the governor. Our governor.
Speaking of people that have dirt on everybody.
Governor Cuomo. We could start anywhere, but obviously I feel like this is the beginning of the end. I think we've passed the point where I'm like, okay, he's going to survive this, whereas he's not running again if he runs, he's not winning. He's not the governor next term.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I think we're past that. It would take some gigantic mea culpa and some catastrophic event that he would have to rally the state around to kind of get around that. I'm just saying. So it would require something that I can't foresee. So now it's a question of I do believe that the people who were being bullied this whole time for the last 3 terms of his feel a little bit emboldened, if not a lot emboldened, and feel like now's the time to step out of his shadow and kind of, take the whack at the piñata, if you will. And people are taking whacks. We have, not only do we have the whole nursing home investigation that kind of, is the underlying a story along with this. He's now have at least 2 sexual harassment claims against him by 2 former aides. And there's calls like that the state party seems to have taken a stand against him, all the way up to the attorney general. I don't know. I think this is the end.
I mean, it should be. Like, if we were in a rational and just society, this wouldn't even be a discussion point right now. And the sexual harassment stuff, I don't want to minimize it. I don't want to. Like, if this is what he's doing and these claims are accurate, then yeah, you're a pig. Like, here's the thing: if you just came out on that front and said, "Listen, I'm an old school guy. It was very inappropriate. I won't do it again. I've learned from my mistakes. It was wrong. I didn't realize it." I would kind of be inclined to say, "All right, fine. You want another shot. I'm not here to like cast any stones. If you can ask for forgiveness, if you can acknowledge that you were wrong and just get on with your day, I'm inclined to say you get another shot." Unless you do it again and then, okay, now we've got a pattern. The nursing home thing, to me, is such a far bigger deal. And the fact that only like 60% of people in New York State think Andrew Cuomo did something wrong with nursing homes. 60. Who are these other 40? Like, what would be...
Well, so I think I saw the same poll. It was... There was some of them did something illegal and some of them handled it wrong. So if you combine the two, it got to a higher percentage.
It was 60% said he did anything wrong, 10% were unsure, and 30% said he did nothing wrong. Okay? Illegal, now it was a higher number. Only like, I think it was 35 or 40% think he did something illegal, or I think it was 30. Only 30% think he did something illegal. Okay, fine, but you could debate the legality because that's always a tricky area because you have to meet specific requirements to violate a law. Being a jerk is not enough. Being irresponsible, negligence even, does not necessarily rise to the point of illegality. It doesn't. But March 25th, he signs an executive order saying nursing homes have to accept or re-accept COVID-19 positive patients. That order was in effect for 6 weeks. It was not rescinded until mid-May. New York State didn't even count nursing home deaths until mid-April as a separate category. Then when they started counting nursing home deaths, because people started asking, hey, this order's in effect, other states have gotten rid of theirs, why is yours still the law of the land? And he said, well, I'm following the CDC recommendations and the Department of Medicare and Medicaid Services. And they went, no, you're not. That's not what the rule was for them at all. So he kept shifting and bullying and calling them political attacks, and anybody that was coming after him for this was a political attack. Okay, so that went on for a few months. Then the Department of Health investigated the order, and they came to the conclusion that it had no impact. All the nursing home spread was driven by people working at the nursing homes and by family through mostly asymptomatic spread, which we now know is nonsense. So that didn't hold up at all. And he said, if you even look at the numbers, this was in the Department of Health report. If you look at the numbers, New York is 36th in nursing home deaths. So you want to know what we did wrong? Well, why don't you go ask those 35 other states and what they did wrong? The whole time knowing they counted them differently. They knew full well nursing home death in any state other than New York is you got it in a nursing home and then died anywhere, you count as a nursing home death because you were a nursing home resident. New York State went, well, if they go to the hospital, then they don't count as a nursing home death. They're a hospital death then.
Yeah, and so this takes us to what seems like a year ago now, but to the call for impeachment from Assemblyman Ron Kim. So you guys remember Ron Kim? He's the Assemblyman who has been trying to draw attention to the nursing home problem since April. He has, I think, an uncle who died in a nursing home and has kind of been, trying to get out in front of this for a while now. He has caught the ire of the governor. He went on CNN, basically told him how he was berated and trying to get him to lie to kind of recreate a timeline for the governor. And now Ron Kim has called for his impeachment. And what I find interesting, we covered this a little bit on our show last week when we talked about the Greater New York Hospital Association. I saw an interview with Assemblyman Kim, and he basically says, okay, well, what's the problem with just hiding the death numbers, right? I mean, they're just numbers. They're not the total number wasn't hidden. It was just where they died. And Ron Kim's answer I thought was interesting because he basically said, follow the money. And so he insinuated that the legal liability given to the Greater New York Hospital Association and their firms was the reason, so that there was this pressure to change that illegal immunity through the legislature, the New York legislature, and that Cuomo, this is Kim's insinuation, is that Cuomo misled the assembly and the legislators so that they would not be able to remove that legal immunity from the Greater New York Hospital Associations and their cohorts. So he thinks that there was a reason why they were hiding the numbers, and that was to basically remove any resistance that was this legal immunity. And so hey, there wasn't anything going on at these nursing homes, and so they're really nothing. We should not really worry about this legal immunity problem. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it makes it more than just hey, who cares where they died? They just died, and it's more than just a total number of deaths. If he was in fact trying to hide the number of deaths to maintain some legal immunity for his friends and campaign contributors, then he needs to go to jail.
Agreed. I'm of the opinion that there's never just one reason for any decision. It's always a lot of different factors that contribute into whatever you decide to do or not to do. So I think it's overly simplistic to say it was because of X or Y or Z. I think there's a multitude of factors. I think one of the reasons was because they realized they were wrong for not tracking the numbers earlier or what the impacts would be. Then they realized that it was going to make them look very bad if they acknowledged that there was that many people who died in nursing homes. So he's America's governor. He's on the TV every day. And I think some of it is just ego of not wanting to open up about that mistake. And then it got referred to the Department of Justice for an investigation, as it should have, because this was crazy. And then they said, his aide came out and just said, yeah, we froze. We didn't want to give them ammunition. Like, oh, you didn't want to give the prosecutorial body the evidence it needed to run an investigation? That was your reasoning, and you thought that was a good thing to say out loud? It's bold. But either way, it was almost like the cover-up was worse than the crime, because people knew this
in August. That was when the Empire Institute filed for the Freedom of Information request to say, wait, let's get the real numbers on nursing homes. You want to know why it matters? Because we use these decisions or these data points to make public policy. And if you guys can remember, back a year ago, the talking point in March, April, and May was, it's not just the old people. It hits everybody. Nobody is safe from this. It can take out a 30-year-old, a 40-year-old. And so then in reality, and keep in mind at this point, New York State was responsible, New York State and New Jersey together at this point in time are responsible for over half of all the deaths in the country at this point last year. And they're trying to say, like, out of these 25,000 deaths that we had in New York at that point, only 6,000 were nursing homes. Well, in reality, the number was 50. It was at that point probably about 13. So again, half of the deaths are coming from a population that makes up less than 1% of the overall picture. And instead of just saying, like, hey, we should probably make limited public policy decisions to prevent the people most vulnerable, we shut down the entire state. Like, we shut down everything, and the rationale was, well, it was asymptomatic spread. Well, no, there wasn't, as it turns out. And even Dr. Fauci at that point in time was saying it would be the first time any pandemic has ever been driven by asymptomatic spread. But, okay, yeah, I guess we didn't know, but maybe we could have played the odds and not gone with the dumbest possible interpretation of the rules and the statistics as they were. Same thing of, well, it hits everybody. See, this perfectly healthy 24-year-old passed away. All right, well, I'm sorry, but obesity is an illness, and that's not perfectly healthy. And number two, there was other factors that probably should have been looked into that were not. So now you're telling me all these other people are at risk. No, they really, yes, some, but it was such a lower percentage, and we knew it even then, but the data coming out of New York was conflicting because we were actively covering up real data. It made no sense to do what we did because ultimately the data doesn't lie. And if you are under the age of 55, statistically speaking, short of a serious medical condition, COVID is of almost no mortality risk to you whatsoever. I know there are exceptions. I know people did die. Understand, I'm talking about statistics here and statistically significant. Yes, there are bolts of lightning. Okay, there are things that happen that and it's awful. But when you're planning as if a 30-year-old and an 80-year-old have the exact same risk of COVID, of getting it, spreading it, dying from it, going to a hospital, that is not supported by any of the data and was not supported by the data even a year ago. But people kept coming up with, well, we really don't know. Well, we really don't know. I get it. But nothing is certain. So why not play the odds? Why not act as if this is not going to be the exception to every general principle of a influenza-like illness that we have ever seen in the history of humanity? Why are we acting as if this one's probably going to be different? Why did we go with the most draconian and harm-causing solution known to man right out of the gate? We put everybody on lockdown, and we killed people. Like, we actively did. These policies are directly responsible for loss of lives, of suicides, overdoses, preventable deaths, deaths of despair, child abuse, domestic violence. Like, we did so much harm. And now we also, as a result, not of COVID, as a result of our response to COVID, we are now about to pass another $2 trillion in relief, bringing the total up, just COVID-related, to $8 trillion of government spending in a year. Not because of COVID, because of our response to COVID. I know economics is hard to understand, and I know it's a boring subject, but do you really think that we can just print and spend $8 trillion and there will never be a real-world effect of that will only ever be limited to money?
Buy Bitcoin.
This is nuts. Like, we have done so much harm, and we're going to do so much more harm because what we're doing is we're increasing the money supply so much. And yes, I know that doesn't automatically lead to hyperinflation any more than, putting a lot of like loose paper, kindling, and logs in a circle and then covering it in gasoline and saying, well, it's not going to cause a fire. Sure, but at some point, if something goes wrong, you're going to wish you hadn't done this. And that's the fear is I've made this point on the show before, I'll make it again. For every 1% increase in unemployment in the United States, 37,000 people will die. That's what the statistics bear out. Again, it's a lot harder to explain that to somebody than my grandma died or my aunt died or my nephew died of COVID, but it's still real numbers. So, yes, statistically speaking, it's a much larger threat for killing Americans, for killing people, than COVID was for the younger people. So if you're worried about one, please understand, ignoring the other one doesn't make it less true. It's a comparative risk. And we got it wrong. And we got it wrong because we're relying on bad data, and we're relying on these egomaniac politicians and bureaucrats that are like, I'm here to save it, and the only way to do that is we're going to shut down everything to make sure that we don't die of COVID. And then what happened? It spread anyway. We didn't even stop COVID. What was the point?
Yeah, not much a point. And I think that's now we're I think the state legislature is starting to see that at least, probably a couple things are playing into this, but they're ramped up the efforts to strip Cuomo of his COVID emergency powers. Even the mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, has come out and said it's important to immediate a stripping of his powers, I believe he wants. So
I love how much they despise each other, by the way.
I mean, it's fun, but it's, I don't know how productive they all are, but it's good entertainment, I guess. So, but anyway, he's called for the removal of the pandemic emergency powers. I think that would give, the original thing would at least give the localities, the municipalities, back their emergency powers rights. So Cuomo, not only did he pass the emergency powers, he also passed this additional emergency power that basically said, yeah, all you county executives out there, your emergency powers you have to go through me anyway. So I think the first thought was to remove that and give some localities back, which I think would help with the vaccine rollout. I think that would give them the flexibility to kind of do their thing that they've been doing for decades here, so especially in this county. But I don't know. It's I think that seems like a no-brainer at this point. I don't know why it's taken so long. Well, I know why it's taken so long because it's politics. But I mean, it seems as though the momentum
has shifted.
Is there. So I assume this is going to happen. I don't know how it unfolds from there. Like, there's been talk about the legislature adding some kind of layer. So if they remove the locality emergency powers restrictions, that they can then sign off on any of the governor's executive orders through legislative approval. They should just take back their jobs and do what they were elected to do and remove him of powers and actually, again, represent the people. So
it's a crazy idea. You want the legislature to legislate?
I know.
Radical thinking.
I'm just trying to find some stability here, Mr. Hussong.
Radical thinking that the legislature might create the laws. That's bonkers.
And then all of this. So we talk about the nursing homes and the cover up and the limited liability and all the terrible messaging and the hiding of the data. And then on top of all that, we get back-to-back sexual harassment allegations from two former aides of his. One had made these accusations not as detailed a few months ago, maybe a few weeks ago, I guess, maybe a couple months ago. Anyway,
months.
But she made these accusations that they were there. They didn't really, they didn't really gain too much traction then. But she came out with more detail, basically saying that he forced a kiss on her, an unwanted kiss, and unwanted touching, and made a strip poker joke on a plane with this one. There was another sexual harassment charge from another aide. But this has led to calls for an investigation. The calls for an independent investigation were met with Cuomo by basically appointing his own investigator.
Smart.
It's very smart. That didn't go over well with most people, shockingly. And
Weird.
Then so he decided, okay, well, we'll give the attorney general the power, and she can work with our this state Supreme Court judge that I appointed. And to her credit, Attorney General James basically said, no thanks, I don't need the handheld from the state judge. I could do my own thing. Give me a referral for a complete independent investigation with subpoena power. And he granted it to her. So I assume we're going to get a pretty thorough investigation here. Excited is not the right word, but I'm totally interested in see what kind of where the investigation would go.
I guess the analogy, first off, I love that you called it, he made a strip poker joke. I was just joking, unless you were going to say yes.
Right.
Just throwing it out there.
Well, he said it was, he admitted in his apology, if you guys haven't read, I didn't bring up that, but he did make an apology, at least a first legitimate, I think, attempt to make an apology anyway. And he basically admitted that he was, my comments were taken as flirtation. So it's not like he was unaware of what was going on.
Yeah, and listen, I guess this is always the what's the right way of saying this? This is sort of the gray area of this field for me. Is I think that there is some of it is meant to be flirtatious and lighthearted, and then some of it does cross a line, and it's not always clear to say, like, okay, the line is exactly here. But if you're a 63-year-old all-powerful governor over a state and you're interacting with a 25-year-old aide who works for you and is probably her first real big job in politics, or second, like early in her career, maybe you want to play a little more cautious than that. Maybe acknowledge the power dynamic at least somewhat. I'm not telling you that you've got to be like, you don't got to go full Mike Pence of like no meetings without my wife present, but maybe wait on the strip poker jokes until, I don't know, never. But either way, I guess this is the analogy I will draw for my feelings on this sexual harassment thing. There are so many worse things that Andrew Cuomo should be going down for. That, like, the nursing home stuff and the cover-up that ensued is so much worse. But Al Capone went to prison for tax evasion, not for the countless murders, but he still went to prison. So if this is what gets him out, if this is what strips the powers and gets us back to some semblance of normalcy, I'm in. I don't care what the means is at this point. If this is what people care more about than the one study said 1,000 nursing home residents who would not have died but for the order. So if the sexual harassment somehow matters more than the 1,000 of dead people, okay, whatever gets it done at this point. Because this is a travesty, what we have witnessed. The fact that there are still people out here actively and fervently defending this man is the height of insanity to me. It's the height of insanity. And it's just the partisan nature of politics that we have today. And listen, it's the same on the Trump side and the Cuomo side, the Biden side, McConnell, whomever. Pick your politician. The blind fealty that people have to these idiots, that's not the right word. They're not dumb people. They're very smart people. I can't say the word I want to say, so I'm just going to go with these jerks, is crazy to me.
Haven't you seen this in the last week where people are talking about if you think politicians care about you, then you also think the strippers care about you?
That's just like the bartender really thinks you're funny.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's about it, too, of they don't care. Not even a little. And even if they did, it's so low on the priority list that it's hard to fathom of, I hope that his powers are removed. It's inarguable at this point that he should still have them. I'm sorry, but there's no possible justification for that. If this guy stays out of prison, I would call that I don't want to listen. That's like more up in the air. I would have to look into the relevant statutes more as far as filing a false report of the Department of Health. Literally, there were so many falsehoods in that investigative report that it was hard to fathom. And it was just so brazen how little they cared the prospect that they might get found out. I guess that's what I find troubling about all of this is they just know that they're not going to get caught. They know that nobody's going to call them on it, so they just do whatever they want and say whatever they want. And we don't have a good media anymore that's going to do this. I mean, when this order was in effect, Andrew Cuomo went on his brother's primetime show on a news network organization that does no opinion pieces, only news, and he got interviewed by his brother every day for like a week while this order was in effect. And now one point that our esteemed media organization look at them and go, hey, so this nursing home order, are you sure this is the right idea? Have you looked at any impact? No, you're too busy making big nose jokes with a Q-tip. Thank God. Thank God we got that covered.
Riveting.
Yeah, it's weird. There's no Cuomo-sexuals anymore.
Cuomo-sexual harassment.
I loved that title, by the way. That was very well done. And I'm wondering how, and I guess this is my question for you on the same topic. How much of this do you think is because of the split going on within the Democrat Party right now between the Democratic Socialist wing, far more progressive wing, and the old school conservative Democrats that have run the state for so long?
Yeah, so I mean, there's always this power struggle of, and I'm going to make up my own labels, and I'm going to call it the establishment, because there's establishment Democrats, and there's some establishment Republicans in there too. Obviously, in New York, we have a far higher proportion of establishment Democrats just because that's where we are.
Sure.
So I think that plays a role. I think there is a split. Back to what I was saying earlier, I feel like the progressive part has been beaten down by this governor. Every time they try to stand up to the dude, he tries to knock him over. So I feel like they think he's teetering, and is probably the weakest he's ever been in his whole political career. And if they're ever going to take a shot, this is the shot they need to take. So I expect them to have a strong contending candidate in the 2022 primary for governor if he decides to run.
Andrew Yang?
No, he's probably gonna be the mayor. So I don't know if he'll. I don't know if he'll actually.
Bill de Blasio for governor.
No, we're just wrong way, Ben. We're going the wrong way down the spiral.
I can't help myself.
You can go Donald Trump for governor. Are you just going to keep adding?
Don Jr.
There we go. They're all available.
Oh my God.
I don't know what's going to happen here, but I expect a new governor in 2022. And like I said, I have long said that I thought the only people who could take out the governor were the New York State Democrats. I still stand by that, and I think they're trying. I think they're to the point where even the cronies who are hanging on, they see the light is not at the end of the tunnel anymore for the governor, and I think they're going to jump off as quickly as possible here.
So 2 things on that. 1, careful of a drowning man. It's a dangerous prospect. And number 2, if you shoot at the king, you best not miss.
No.
If you're going to take your shot.
Listen, I mean.
Don't be wrong on this one.
I talked to Ron Kim about that because he's basically taking straight aim at the governor for multiple levels, and we'll see, he was a nobody 2 weeks ago. Nobody even knew his name, and now he's a darling in the media here a little bit. But he's taking a stand, and I commend him for it because there is no more powerful person in New York than Governor Cuomo.
So Ron Kim is like a progressive Democrat socialist, new progressive party. Like ideologically speaking, I doubt Mr. Kim and I would agree on very many solutions. I think we would actually agree on the problems. I think we would just disagree on most of the solutions. My hat's off to the man. Truly, like, it's easy to say it now, but listen, imagine you're the one getting this phone call. You're this no-name state assemblyman from Queens, and Andrew Cuomo calls you and threatens to destroy you. You going to stand up? We all like to think we would. Every one of us would like to be like, oh, yeah, without a second thought. But think about your family. Think about your kids. Think about, like, you've worked so hard for all that you've gotten. And technically speaking, this guy's on your side.
Yeah.
And now you're getting coerced and threatened by what is not a small amount of power for a governor.
No, like I said, he's one of the most powerful politicians in the world. So, especially in the country. I mean, he's, a handful are more powerful than him in our country anyway. So, I don't know how it's going to end, but I am fascinated. I'm sure that'll give us weeks and weeks of content coming all the way through 2022. What do you think?
I think so, too. I mean, I'm curious to see. I think everybody's been very focused on Trump splitting the Republican Party and that it was going to happen. He spoke yesterday and said, I'm not forming a new party. That's not what we're going to do. I look at the left and I think you guys are in danger of splitting because you're really coming apart on some very central issues that if you don't I think both parties are at risk of splitting, let me be clear. But that split, like the progressives, the Democratic Socialists, have really gained more ground than I thought they would have in a very short amount of time. And they are, like I said, I actually agree with most of their stances on what is wrong, and I agree with it. I just think that, as their numbers continue to grow, it's going to be hard. I envision like the Democrats that I know well that are older, that have been Democrats forever, aligning with some of the more prominent figures of the Democratic Socialists, of the Bernie Sanders, the AOCs, and all this crew. Ideologically speaking, they have almost nothing in common. Nothing except that Republicans are bad, which I also agree with. Like that's a true statement. How long can that go on?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've been watching this split happening almost in slow motion a little bit for a while, and I keep thinking eventually there's going to be a tipping point. And obviously, as somebody who functions inside the Libertarian Party, have been waiting for one of these two parties to collapse and for us to catch all these falling pieces as they're coming. As that party breaks apart. And if they both break apart, we could catch pieces from both parties because I think there's some overlap there.
Agreed.
But I don't know. I don't know if the Libertarian Party or another third party or somebody taking over one of these two main parties is the right answer, or what is the answer is the right thing. If one of those entities can be used to, reinvigorate the country as opposed to polarize the country, which is seemingly what all political parties do. I don't know. Like I said, we're in a bad spot, and like I said, I think most of the people who are holding on to hopes that the establishment New York Democrats are holding on are probably, have done stuff maybe not quite as Cuomo-ish, but they've been in politics for decades, and they've seen some stuff and probably done some stuff that they're probably not proud of.
And Andrew Cuomo probably knows about it,
and he definitely knows about it,
and has evidence of it.
Right.
I guess here's my thing. I'm wary of political parties at this point because I'm seeing how bad they get, and people will absolutely just turn their brain off to anything bad about theirs and anything good about the other side. And I do think a sports analogy is apt here because you're cheering for your team, and you can pay lip service to the idea of like, well, it's really for America overall, but it's because I think that this party's better. But eventually you just start cheering for your team. It's basic human psychology is if you're not aware of it, you're going to do it more and more. And we've lost the ability for like critical thinking of or just acknowledging of like, hey, I can agree with Andrew Cuomo on something and still find him to be a terrible governor. I can agree with Donald Trump on something and still find him to be a horrible human being. Like, I don't need to be all in or all out on any one of these people. And I think that's sort of the danger of political parties, especially when there's only two that have a legitimate shot at anything. Now, of all of the fringe and ancillary political parties, I hate the Libertarian Party the least. But It's the same basic idea of, look, it's such dogma of if we start actually discussing things in depth, what you'll find is we all can agree, I shouldn't say all, most of us can agree on identifying the problems that are here if we would just listen to each other. And for the most part, we all want the same end game. We want the same result. It's just a fundamental disagreement on how to get there. So somebody that doesn't support a $15 minimum wage doesn't hate poor people. It's a concern about inflation and about employment and how it's going to concede more power away from people and over to government. That doesn't mean you don't care about poor people. And in the same time, if somebody does support a $15 minimum wage, it doesn't mean they're idiots. It means that that's a priority for them, and they're looking at it from that perspective and saying it should help. It's both a theory, but there's got to be some common ground, and I think the more that we shelter ourselves and identify only with political parties, the worse this gets for everybody. So we either need way more parties or none. I guess that's where I'm at now. An overlap between the parties. Let's get 8 of them and have them work together where it makes sense.
Yeah, and that's how most other countries operate with multiple. There's way more than 2 parties. And I don't know what the right answer is either. My contention has been for a while is that if you had multiple parties, the parties would be there, but you would have to build coalitions with the parties because you couldn't have a majority without a coalition.
Right.
Which I think would foster discussion about policies, which I think would be good, as opposed to just they're bad, we're good, or vice versa. And
everything boiled down to talking points at all points. That's actually a really good point of having to build a coalition across parties. I think it makes sense because, and the other thing I think I shouldn't say that. The one thing that I will disagree with anybody on is my stance being, and I'm not really willing to budge on this, we have to curb the executive. We have got to stop letting governors and presidents just pass laws however they feel fit and going around the legislature to get whatever they want passed because that is unhealthy. I understand it's more efficient. I understand that it's faster. I'm not arguing any of that. It's got to stop.
Yeah, well, our system wasn't designed to be fast and efficient, right? It was designed to be thorough. And, yeah, with these executive orders, there's no checks and balances whatsoever.
Right.
And Justin Amash, former congressman, libertarian congressman who no longer in office, has been calling Congress broken for years, if not a decade here. And he basically says, there's a power vacuum in Washington, D.C. It's whoever's the speaker. There's very few people who have access to that. There's no amendments ever offered by congressional people. Which is what we send them to do. There's no discussion of legislation on the floor ever anymore. It's all done in backroom deals. It's all done in closed doors. And then and it's written by people who have the vested interest to make it happen. And we don't see any of it. And they're just forced to vote on it because of party lines. So it's not any kind of productive means of legislation. It's basically what we had in New York for a decade, 3 men in a room deciding what was happening and then, just forcing it on the rest of us.
Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Great men, therefore, are typically bad men. And you're seeing this play out on every level of our government right now. If they have too much power, the Republican Party and the Democrat Party have too much power because they can coerce any candidate into having to do whatever they want or else you lose your funding. And listen, it happens both sides of the aisle of if you're going to stand up and fight, then we're going to primary you and we're going to throw all our money behind somebody who will play ball for our team.
Yeah, you get stripped of committee assignments and they primary you if you don't play ball. So
right, it's a wholly corrupt system, and it's not going to stop until we, as everyday people, stop supporting the party. Stop. It's craziness that we still do this. It's absolutely unfounded in any sort of self-interest or long-term benefit for the country as a whole. It is going to lead to destruction and chaos if we continue to do this. And the reality is, I think we might be too far gone at this point because nobody has the will to really look at their own party and say, you know what? You're just as bad. It's two sides of the same coin that play the same dirty games, that rig the same game to keep everybody else out, consolidate power for themselves at the top, and then just play little game of back and forth like tennis with, okay, you get the presidency this time. Okay, you get it this time. Okay, we'll take over here. Okay, now this. It's crazy.
It's wrestling.
Yeah.
It's professional wrestling.
It's professional wrestling, and we got rid of P.T. Barnum finally. But this has been the point that you and I have been, I think, fairly consistent on over the last, well, we've only been doing the show for a year, but even our private conversations over the last 3 or 4 years, it's not that Trump was good. It was the reaction to Trump was so overblown compared to, like, guys, this is not the most corrupt politician we have ever seen. This is like run-of-the-mill stuff. And the one saving grace that I did genuinely like about Donald Trump is he didn't do a lot by executive action after undoing some of the ones when he first got in. After that, he didn't take over all the powers when COVID hit and take the War Powers Act and just run the country as a dictator. I like that. He didn't use executive orders to do the tax reform. Like, I want presidents who don't do this. I want presidents that actually follow the rules. And, yeah, I get the legislature is going to fight and they're going to gridlock. Fine. That still doesn't mean you go around them. That means that now you have to run a new type of campaign to get people in.
Have a more convincing idea.
Right. And now the ideas can win instead of a popularity contest between 20 million people that live in New York and then 4 million that live in Idaho that couldn't have less in common, but we're supposed to just let one person decide what's best for everybody. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. All right. I think that does it for us today. I do want to remind everybody, so in the next couple of weeks, I'll be reaching back out to Ben Davidson. He was a guest on, I can't remember which show, back 13, 12, something like that, early on. He is coming out with a new book right here, The Next End of the World, The Rebirth of Catastrophism. And I'm going to give, I got 2 books if you didn't see. I'm going to read one and give one away. So when he comes on the show, we'll probably have more details about that, but be ready for that.
Really good children's book for trying to get your kids to sleep at night. I would start with that. Obviously, I'm kidding.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. Truth is truth, I guess.
Yeah, the truth is truth, but that doesn't mean I'm reading it to my 7-year-old.
All right,
so buddy, let's talk about it. Oh, wait, hang on. I got a sports update for you. Breaking news. J.J. Watt is now an Arizona Cardinal.
Oh, their defense is sick. Their defense was good last year. Interesting. All right, well, on that breaking news, Mr. Hussong, would you like to leave the folks with any enlightening words of wisdom for next week?
Yeah. Just be less certain about everything. Be more up to the prospect that you're wrong. That's it.
Love it. All right. Well, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next Monday. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to share our podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a review. Help us out. And you can go to our page here. You can see it scrolling across the bottom of the screen here. If you're really into supporting the show, we have the ability to do that. You can make one-time investment into the show or a recurring investment, 99 cents to $5 or whatever you think we're worth. You can check that out as well. So on that note, I thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you